Hey everyone, CW Music Reviews here. I'm CWD, and this is going to be a music review of the new Laura Marling album, Semper Femina. This is the latest full-length album of up-and-coming UK singer-songwriter Laura Marling. She's been around for quite a while now. She has at least 5 other albums under her belt. I first caught on to her when she did guest vocals with a project that was collaborating with Mumford & Sons, particularly this Darahar project, which was like this EP of 4 songs, primarily consisting of Indian folk reworkings of a couple of songs, a couple of others of their own original composition. Outside of that, I can't say I've been that thrilled or interested in Laura Marling's work. To me, she's always seemed kinda overrated in the terms of up-and-coming singer-songwriter, female vocalist types. It's not to say that I found her work bad or anything like that. I mean, I did like her previous album, Short Movie. It's just that when I did listen to that album, along with a couple of other albums of hers in the past, I can't say that I was that intrigued with what she was doing. To me, she sounded like she was pretty hounded by her influences, namely Joni Mitchell. To a smaller extent, this is the same with this new album. However, I will say that she definitely has improved a lot since Short Movie. If anything, she has improved to the point with this new album that she has pretty much made a fan out of me, and pretty much has didacted my stance on her being an overrated songwriter. This album's about 9 tracks in length. It's 42 minutes long. So there's kind of a sort of accessibility to the length here. You're definitely going to listen to this and get through without any large complaints in terms of the lengths of these tracks and the album as a whole. There's only one track that goes past the 5-minute mark, but none of them go below the 4-minute mark. Now the production on this album, it's actually pretty good. I actually like how intimate and pretty acoustic a lot of these cuts here are. Take a track like Soothing, for example. The bass on this track I love so much. The groove on here sounds really nice and kinda inconspicuous in a way. The string on this track and many tracks here are definitely layered particularly well. Tracks like Always This Way and Next Time are definitely worked particularly well in terms of this really intimate acoustic folk thing that she goes for. The closing track, Nothing Not Nearly, has this really peculiar dual electric guitar, electric slide guitar harmony amongst it that I thought was particularly interesting and pretty emotion stirring in a way. The track Don't Pass Me By has what sounds like electronic beats, but I think it's the way the production makes this percussion sound to where it sounds particularly looped and electronic. Once again, this track is particularly inconspicuous as well as other tracks here. Laura Marling's not really doing anything that's like balls to the wall aggressive on this album. I mean, there's only so much that you can do on an indie folk project. But there's not really a single composition or performance here that I find particularly lacking. I will say tracks like The Valley and Wild Ones, yeah, these aren't bad compositions or anything, but I do feel like they kind of drag in a way. Especially The Valley, with how really atmospheric and almost drone-ish the strings and the looped acoustic guitar chord is doing. So yeah, no issues with the production here, no issues with the instrumentals, and no issues with her vocals or lyrics whatsoever. If anything, these two things are the strongest thing about the record here. If you're familiar with artists like Joni Mitchell, Fiona Apple, you're definitely gonna be finding some slivers of familiarity with her vocal inflection, but that doesn't take away how beautiful and how fantastic a vocalist Laura Marling is. I like pretty much all of the vocal melodies, especially the faster ones like, say, Nothing Not Nearly and Moments of Wildfire. She definitely is able to sell this kind of emotion on a track. She definitely is not, you know, off in the background, complacent with her songwriting. As far as her lyrics goes, this is definitely an onion that I'm still peeling layers and layers and layers off of. She's talking about existentialism, death, love, slivers of maybe gender identity, and I believe she might actually be talking about abuse, both physically and emotionally. For example, soothing. She talks about how she needs soothing and her lips aren't moving and that her God is brooding. This is on the chorus, whereas on the first verse she talks about this creepy infiltrator of sorts. I assume some kind of aggressor in a way. I'm not 100% sure. The way she words a lot of these lyrics here, the way she words a lot of these songs, it's pretty poetic, it's pretty abstract to the point where it's gonna take even more listens to fully decipher what she's talking about. But for the most part, I'm understanding the premise of a lot of these tracks here, like the track Wildfire, where she's talking about, I guess, a friend of hers, or a close friend of hers, that is pretty much kind of suppressed in voice by her father in a way. When she ever wants to say something she really means, she'll write it down in a notepad, and she notes that she's going to write a book about this someday. The track also House is one of my favorite lines on the record. You always say that I'm beautiful when I don't know I'm being seen, and when one day God takes me away, I will understand what the fuck that means. A really potent line about feeling this kind of downtrodden in terms of self-esteem in a way. This track actually kind of confuses me, because I feel like that each verse is a different perspective. The track Always This Way delves in this sort of existential crisis in a way. There's a few lines here where she says that 25 years, nothing to show for it, nothing of any weight, 25 more, will I ever learn from it? In the track Next Time, she talks about how she'll do better next time, or, you know, try to improve next time, but eventually she comes to the conclusion that at some point there will never be a next time. I could probably give you a gist of a good chunk of these tracks, if not all of them, but needless to say, she is definitely upping her lyrical game here. She's definitely improving on what she was doing with Short Movie. She's expounding upon more interesting topics. She is expounding upon topics and really making the listener be provoked in thought when they're actually taking in the lyrics. A lot of the songs here seem to reflect the condition of the female state, and I guess that's why it's called Semper Femina. I was talking to a friend of mine, shout out to Rhiannon by the way, about the origins of this quote, and she concluded that it was from a line by Virgil. Varium et mutaba semper femina, otherwise translated to English as woman is ever a fickle and changeable thing. Whether she is directly or indirectly referencing a Virgil line, it would make sense, but in the track Nouel, she outright says Semper Femina on the track and translates to ever woman, but ever woman by itself, not really a cohesive set of words there, but either way, it definitely makes sense given the consistency in how female it is, how feminine a good chunk of the tracks here are. With the track Nothing Not Nearly definitely wrapping this whole album up in a nice bow, not just because of the hard-hitting guitar that's on this cut that comes up, but also how fast-paced she's singing about how, I guess, life is short in a way, how you need to seize a certain moment in your life because once it's gone, love waits for no one. So there's a good deal of things to like about this album. There's actually a good deal of things to love about this album, and I most certainly do. There's not really anything too negative I can say about any of the tracks here. I will say that the tracks Wild Ones and The Valley, while yeah, I get an idea of the lyrics here, the instrumental concept, the instrumental aspect to these tracks aren't exactly that fleshed out well. They kind of drag in their own way. Plus the track Don't Pass Me By, a instrumental that I like, especially how low-key and how hypnotizing it is in a way. The lyrics here being about, I guess, this individual using, I guess, a song or a guitar. Probably this song or guitar being used as a metaphor, and now it's like not implemented all that well, and this person is neglected. I just wish that this here was fleshed out a little more, in a way. I think if maybe there was 1 or 2 more tracks added here, then I would love this a lot more, especially if these 2 tracks are going to be as good, as instrumentally interesting as this album as a whole is. A big prerequisite for me to like your folk music or your acoustic music isn't only just having a good voice, isn't only just having decent or solid lyricism and content. It's also to have a strong and particularly interesting musical backbone, because without the music behind it, what you're doing isn't that interesting. And in the case of this album, I'm definitely intrigued with this album, and I'm definitely pleased with the results of this album. Laura Marling has effectively turned me into someone that never really had that much anticipation for her work and never really saw the hype behind what she does. And she effectively transformed me into a fan of what she's going to be doing next. If you're a fan of Joni Mitchell, if you're a fan of indie folk, folk rock in general, if you like acoustic music, if you like maybe some Baroque pop or anything of that nature, you're definitely going to want to give this a try, because this will be definitely within your alley. Laura Marling paints a particularly intricate picture here, and I'm definitely going to be interested in picking out each individual hue that's within the canvas itself. This album is a plus 2.5 out of plus 3. I would have liked to sing a lot more if a couple of the tracks were not really feeling like they drag or weren't that sleepy in a way, but that's really it. But if you've given this album a listen, what did you think of it? Did you like this album? Did you dislike this album? What was your reasoning for that, and what should I consider listening to and reviewing next? This is CWD Music Reviews here, signing off.